"She's from Riverside. That's adorable." That's what my sister-in-law whispered at the dinner table, loud enough for everyone but me to pretend they didn't hear. Not a word of thanks for the 12 years I stood beside Mitchell. Not even a glance from the husband who once promised to fight for me. Just mockery and silence. But here's what they didn't know. While they groomed him to trade me for the president's daughter, I was building something of my own. And now, they're leasing their headquarters from me. If you've ever been discarded, replaced, or made to feel invisible, drop a 1 in the comments. If not, count your blessings and drop a 0. Because sometimes the best revenge is simply letting them sit in a room and realize the name on the deed is yours. "You still do that tea thing?" Dana snorted, nudging her cousin with a flick of her manicured finger. The words floated across the table like perfume turned sour. Light, meant to amuse, but laced with poison. They didn't expect me to hear it. They never did. I sat at the far end of the dinner table, tucked between a potted ficus and a flickering sconce that hadn't worked properly in years. My chair wobbled. No one noticed. No one offered to fix it. I placed my handbag neatly under my feet, straightened my napkin across my lap, and reached for the teapot I had brought with me. Chamomile and fennel, ceramic, floral, quiet. I poured myself a cup with steady hands. Garrett sat 5 chairs away, engaged in performative laughter with his father and the COO of Gallagher and Sons. He hadn't looked at me once all evening. Not when we entered. Not when we sat. Not even when Dana's dig hit the air and drew chuckles from the gallery of cousins and business associates. My face flushed, but I didn't flinch. I just sipped. The dinner was meant to be a celebration. Gallagher's merger with the Magna Mia Group. Old West Coast legacy meets international influence. The dining room shimmered with crystal and gold. 3 courses already served. Servers drifted like stagehands. Garrett's father leaned toward him, voice low but not low enough. "It's time," he said. "You've done your duty." Garrett gave the smallest nod, a twitch more than a movement. Then he turned back to his lamb. 12 years of marriage. I used to believe that meant something. College nights spent studying together. He used to bring me boba after night class, used to hold my hand under the library table. I thought that was love. I thought I was enough. Apparently not enough to compete with the daughter of a president. "Artie!" Dana called down the table, voice sugar-laced and loud enough to quiet the silverware. "You're being so quiet tonight. Everything okay down there at the kiddie end?" Laughter rippled politely. Even Garrett smiled faintly. I smiled too, thin, practiced. "Everything's perfect," I replied, "just soaking it all in." Then I stood and excused myself. Not one person turned to watch me leave. In the restroom, the air was thick with rose water and bleach. I pressed my hands to the marble sink, grounding myself in its coolness. From behind me, a voice, familiar, sharp, mandarin-laced, pierced the silence. "She'll be out of the picture by next week," Claudine said, calm, decisive. "The president's daughter arrives Friday. Garrett will do as he's told. The trade deal is secure. We've done our part." My heart didn't break. It hardened. I reapplied my lipstick, adjusted the line of my blazer, and walked back into the dining room. No one noticed I'd been gone. I sat, poured myself another cup of tea, and watched the amber surface ripple. Then I stood again, alone, and left before dessert. In the car, I didn't cry. In the elevator, I didn't sigh. When the biometric scanner greeted me, "Welcome home, Ms. Thorne," I didn't feel triumphant. I felt ready. The penthouse opened around me like a breath held too long. Sleek lines, earth tones, No family photos. No Garrett. Just silence and glass. The walls didn't carry echoes. They absorbed. I dropped my handbag on the console, peeled off the sheath dress I'd worn for show, and slipped into cotton loungewear. I boiled water, steeped chamomile. No need for fennel tonight. The bitterness was already there. I opened my laptop. No messages from Garrett. Of course not. He wouldn't notice my absence. He never did. But I had never stopped noticing him, watching him, planning for this. Marlowe Entities Holdings loaded slowly. 7 companies, offshore trusts, biotech, AI, real estate, clean energy. I had been building a fortress while he told me to stay home and be creative. The teacup warmed my hands. My resolve warmed my spine. One new message: deed transfer complete. Hawthorne and Oak was mine. The building Gallagher and Sons was moving into, the same one they toasted at dinner. I smiled. Not with satisfaction. With certainty. Then a message from Sasha. Preliminary review of Gallagher trade license shows gaps. Proceed? My reply. Full audit. Start with import-export logs. Flag anything older than 3 years. The reply was near instant. On it. Outside, Los Angeles flickered. Lights and lives, cars and stories. Garrett's story was still being written, in ink he didn't know I owned. I poured a second cup. The tea had cooled, but the fire in my chest hadn't. The house didn't recognize me anymore. Not the way the light hit the walls, colder than it used to be. Not the way the citrus cleaner clung too sharp to the granite counters. I stepped inside like a guest. No, like a stranger who still had a key but no claim. The throw pillows were wrong. Too symmetrical. The kitchen stools were new, leather-trimmed and sterile. A carefully staged simulation of home. Garrett stood at the island, arms crossed, casual in a way that felt off. His gaze flicked up from his phone, slow and flat. There it is, he said, nodding to a manila envelope at the center of the counter. I didn't ask. I already knew. I picked it up, peeled back the flap, and unfolded the contents. Divorce papers, filed 2 days ago. Irreconcilable differences, no spousal support, no mention of division, clean, cold, convenient. She's moving in this weekend, he added, still staring at his phone like he was ordering groceries. Figured there's no point in dragging this out. I slid the paperwork back into the envelope, tucked it neatly shut. I'll review it. That got his attention. His eyes lifted, a half-smirk forming, lazy and smug. You'll be fine. You were always good at surviving. I reached into my tote bag and pulled out a folded sheet of paper, slightly yellowed at the corners. Notary seal is still crisp. I placed it on the counter beside the envelope. You might want to read that. He looked at it like it might explode. What is it? I didn't answer. Let the silence do the work. Eventually, he opened it. His brows furrowed, then twitched. His mouth parted, then closed again. This isn't what we agreed to, he said, voice smaller now. No, I replied. It's what you signed. 10 years ago, the day after his firm went public, after 3 bourbons and 1 celebratory toast too many, I had asked him to sign a safety revision to our prenup. Just a name update, I told him. You said it was for tax, he said now, staring at the signature. You weren't paying attention. You never were. The clause was simple. If the divorce was initiated by him due to infidelity or abandonment, I retained full claim to all shared assets and half of his personal holdings. He blinked hard. You tricked me. No, I said calmly. You underestimated me. His jaw clenched. His hands trembled just slightly. I saw it, that fragile moment where ego meets consequence. But I didn't press. I didn't gloat. I just stood still. None of this will hold, he muttered, pacing now. You can't enforce this. I already have, I replied. My phone buzzed. A message from Sasha. Court filing complete. Asset freeze in progress. Next step, Gallagher portfolio sweep? I typed back. Yes. Begin with family trusts. Garrett leaned over the counter, fists planted. You planned this. No, I said, tilting my head. You did, the moment you stopped seeing me as your equal. He exhaled sharply, then chuckled once, bitter and broken. So what now? You take half my company? Humiliate me? You already did that to yourself. I walked past him, my footsteps soft against the hardwood that used to carry our Sunday mornings. I paused at the stairs, turned. You said I was good at surviving, I said. You were right, but this isn't survival anymore. His eyes narrowed. Then what is it? Proof. Have you ever been quietly erased from a life you helped build, like your loyalty was disposable? That hollow moment when the person you loved treats you like a guest in your own story. If you felt that sting, drop a comment number 7 below. Now, let's see what I do with the pen in my hand. Upstairs, the bedroom was still half mine. Technically. I opened the drawer on my side. His junk mail and tangled chargers hadn't moved. But in the back, untouched, was my old journal. I took it. Its pages held more truth than anything Garrett had ever written. On the vanity sat the last thing I wanted from this place, a small bottle of rose lavender perfume. My mother's. She used to wear it when she wanted to feel brave. I dabbed a touch on my wrist. Downstairs again, Garrett hadn't moved. He stood in silence as I picked up my envelope, my journal, and the contract he never bothered to read. Tell Claudine the house looks lovely staged. Shame it never looked like this when I lived here. Then I walked out. Quiet, clean, like surgery. The air outside was cooler than I remembered. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows on the pavement. I slipped into the back seat of my car and shut the door behind me. Mila sat in the front, scrolling through her tablet. He didn't see it coming, she said without looking up. They never do. She handed back a folder. Tax documents for Gallagher. Imports, exports, licensing gaps. Sasha already flagged 3 offshore shells they forgot to declare. I flipped through the files, scanned dates and numbers. Start the audit with Oakport Shipping. The foundation always cracks at the bottom. Understood. My phone buzzed again. Sasha this time. Press wants to comment on merger delays. Shall we stay silent? I replied. Let silence speak first. Noise comes later. That night, in my penthouse, I lit 1 candle, cypress and bergamot. I sat at the kitchen island, the same one Garrett never knew existed, and wrote a single line in my journal. He gave me the pen. I wrote the ending. They walked into the boardroom like they still owned the skyline. Garrett first, adjusting his cufflinks with that familiar flick of entitlement. Alina followed, wrapped in an ivory blazer that probably cost more than the office furniture. Her parents came next, her father barking into a Bluetooth headset, her mother assessing the room like it was beneath her standards. None of them noticed the small plaque on the wall beside the conference screen. Please have a seat, the leasing manager said, standing beside a neat folder and an open laptop. This the place? Alina asked, eyeing the room like it smelled strange. Garrett scoffed. Looks cheap. Let's keep this short. I watched everything through the one-way glass from the side suite, the control room I designed for moments exactly like this. Miriam stood beside me, silent, composed. The moment Garrett dropped into the chair at the head of the table, the manager tapped a key on the laptop. The screen lit up. Owner, Celine Thorne, Arena Holdings. It was like a blade in the silence. Garrett's body tensed. Alina blinked. Her mother frowned. Her father finally removed his headset. "What the hell is this?" Garrett muttered. "No prank," the leasing manager replied. "We've updated the lease terms as outlined in your transition packet. As of last quarter, this property is under Arena Holdings. The new agreement includes revised rates and updated compliance clauses." "How revised?" Alina asked, voice tightening. The manager slid a copy of the lease across the table. "Triple the previous rate, and occupancy limitations per fire code enforcement." Garrett's hands trembled as he picked up the lease. I could see it from where I stood. He scanned the top sheet, then the signature line at the bottom. My name was there, bold, undeniable. "This is extortion," he said, the words snapping in the air. "No, Mr. Thorne," the manager replied. "This is business. Arbitration clause is in effect. You may either accept or begin the 14-day vacate process." Alina turned slowly. "Wait, Celine? Celine Thorne? Your ex-wife?" He didn't answer. That was answer enough. Her lips parted, furious and pale. Her father leaned forward, slamming a palm on the table. "You said the lease was standard. You said this building was secure." "I didn't know," Garrett started, floundering. "She's the owner," Alina hissed. Outside the glass, Miriam's phone buzzed once. She showed me the screen without a word. Breaking. "CEO dumps wife for political heiress. Now pays $400,000 a month in rent to ex." The timing was perfect. I didn't leak the article, but I didn't stop at either. "Per clause 47A," the manager continued, unbothered. "Refusal to sign will activate relocation terms. You will have 14 calendar days to vacate." "You wouldn't dare make this public," Garrett snapped. From the speaker embedded in the ceiling, Sasha's voice responded cool and smooth. "You already did, Mr. Thorne." Dead silence. Garrett stood too fast, knocking his chair sideways. He glared at the screen, at the name etched there, at me, though he couldn't see me. "We'll take this to court." "You waived litigation," the manager reminded him. "Voluntarily." "I didn't know." "You didn't care to ask," I whispered behind the glass. Alina remained seated, staring at the lease. Her fingers curled slightly over the table's edge. "She played you," she said softly, "but he'll come crawling back." I leaned into the mic, though it wasn't connected. My voice didn't need to reach her, just the idea of it. "He should bring a tent." The room began to fracture. Alina's father stormed out first, followed by his wife. Alina hesitated a beat longer, then gathered her folder and sunglasses and left with a flick of her hair. Garrett stood alone for a moment longer, then left without another word. When the door clicked shut, Miriam exhaled. "That went better than expected." "They still don't know the lease escalation isn't the end," I said. "Just the start." I stepped out into the now empty boardroom, picked up the lease they left behind. My name stared back at me in sharp black font. It wasn't vanity, it was history. Later that afternoon, Mila met me at the downtown cafe. We sat by the window, and I watched the same building from across the street, hawthorn and oak, shimmer against the glass skyline. "You ready for the next move?" she asked, handing me a thin envelope. "Always." Inside was the final approval from Lockmere Holdings. The acquisition was complete, and they had no idea their next office space would depend on my mercy. I stirred my tea, black, no sugar, no need for sweetness anymore. The envelope sat on my kitchen counter like a dare. No return address, just my name in Garrett's handwriting, looped, controlled. the kind he used when he wanted to seem sincere. I didn't touch it right away. I stared at it for longer than I'd like to admit. Then I peeled it open with one hand and pulled out a single sheet of paper. Folded inside was something glossier, heavier, an ultrasound, blurry, black and white, dated 3 weeks ago. Tucked beside it, a note, short and sharpened like a blade. We were going to name her Hope. I didn't know she'd never get to meet you. I sat down without realizing it. My knees just gave out. My hand gripped the edge of the counter to stay upright. My heart didn't ache. It clenched. Not because of the photo, not because of the words, but because of the name, Hope. The same name I whispered into a hospital pillow 8 years ago after a doctor told me there was no heartbeat. Garrett wasn't there. He was on a golf course. Cell reception spotty. He'd texted, "You've always been fragile." I stared at the ultrasound, then at the date in the corner. Something didn't fit. Alina didn't look pregnant. She hadn't posted any announcement. No baby bump, no cravings, no whispers of maternity leave. I opened my laptop and started searching. Photos from galas, from press junkets, from diplomatic events. Alina in silk, in heels, in cinched waistlines. Not a single image where she looked even remotely pregnant. I checked timestamps, cross-referenced locations. She'd been photographed almost daily. No baby bump, no pause, nothing. I picked up my phone and called someone I hadn't spoken to in years. "Hey, it's Artie," I said. A pause, then a warm voice. "Artie! Wow! It's been a while." "Quick question, off the record. Have you had any patients named Alina Creed or Alina Thorne in the past 4 months?" Dana ran the front desk at a high-end OB/GYN clinic in Pasadena. She'd helped me once with a nonprofit initiative. She owed me. A pause. Then, "Not that I know of." Nothing under either name. "Should I check with Dr. Rains?" "No," I said quietly. "Thanks." I hung up. The lie settled over me like smog. Garrett had faked a pregnancy. Not just any pregnancy. He'd used the name of the daughter we never had. I stood still for what felt like an hour. My chest didn't move. My face didn't twitch. The fire that rose in me wasn't rage. It was something colder. Control. I picked up my phone again and tapped a number I hadn't dialed since the Lee story went viral. Joelle Park answered on the third ring. "Ms. Thorne," she said, sharp as ever. "I'm ready to talk," I said. Very on the record. By morning, the article was live. Fake baby, real fallout. CEO's ex-wife exposes manufactured miscarriage for financial leverage. It exploded in under 2 hours. Reddit threads, comment storms, think pieces. The ultrasound photo was analyzed, debunked, dissected. Someone even tracked the template. It had been lifted from a stock image archive for fake sonograms. By noon, Garrett's startup dropped 18% in market value. One of their biggest clients terminated the partnership, citing serious ethical misalignment. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. I just brewed tea and let the silence hum. That evening, Mila arrived with a box of files. She looked at the article, shook her head, and set the folders on the kitchen island. "He's spiraling," she said. "Claudine's PR team pulled all her socials. Garrett hasn't responded to the board." Let them drown in their silence. But then my phone buzzed. Sasha. "You might want to sit down," she said. "I'm already sitting." "He just filed a motion, Garrett. He's contesting the divorce division, claims he suffered emotional trauma from the loss of an unborn child, and that you leveraged that grief during lease negotiations." I closed my eyes, breathed once. "He's suing me for the lie he created." "Yes." My knuckles turned white around the mug. I didn't speak for several seconds. Then, No more mercy. That night, I didn't sleep. Instead, I opened a locked drawer in my desk, the one I hadn't touched since the hospital. Inside was a copy of the condolence note I never sent to myself. I read it once, then burned it in the sink. He didn't get to rewrite my grief. He didn't get to wear pain he never earned. And he didn't get to use hope again. The next morning, Joelle called. I'm getting offers from networks. Everyone wants your side. I'm not selling a scandal, I said. I'm setting a standard. Quote of the year. I smiled. First real one in weeks. Later that day, a handwritten envelope arrived. Different handwriting. No perfume. Just paper. Inside. I'm sorry he dragged you into this. You deserved more. I've always known what he was. Thank you for doing what I couldn't. It wasn't signed, but I didn't need a signature. The envelope was postmarked from D.C. Alina. The name Lockmere Holdings had never meant anything to Garrett. That was his first mistake. It wasn't flashy like Gallagher and Sons, not inherited like Thorn Capital, not buzzing on tech blogs or trending in IPO circles. But Lockmere owned things, like bones beneath buildings, invisible until fractured. And last quarter, Lockmere quietly acquired the management contract for one very specific high-rise in downtown LA. The one Garrett and Claudine were still clinging to. I received confirmation at 7:43 a.m. sharp. One-line email. Sasha had impeccable timing. Transfer complete. You now own controlling interest in Lockmere Holdings. That morning, I chose a navy pantsuit, clean, unapologetic, and met Mila at the Arena boardroom. Denise had already arranged the contract packages on the conference table. Everything was ready. They're expecting a formality, Denise said, sliding the summary page toward me. A renewal with modest adjustments. They're getting an ultimatum, I replied. Garrett didn't ask for the meeting. Claudine did. The email was phrased as a cordial alignment of expectations, but the subtext screamed desperation. They'd read the press, seen the stock dip, watched Alina vanish from social events. They were grasping at old rope, unaware I'd already burned the dock. They arrived at 10:02. Claudine first, black dress, too many pearls, smile like lacquered steel. Garrett followed, silent and pale. I stood when they entered, not out of politeness. Control was best exercised slowly. Celine, Claudine said, as if we were exchanging recipes. You look refreshed. Ownership suits me. We sat. Denise passed them the documents, new lease terms, revised operating costs, and the updated title transfer. Garrett's eyes scanned the page, then stopped. Froze. You bought Lockmere? He asked. I bought silence, I said. Control just came with it. You can't be serious, Claudine cut in. You'd evict your own family? I met her stare without blinking. You evicted me emotionally years ago. I'm just finalizing the paperwork. Garrett looked down at the numbers. This quadruples our overhead, I nodded. Or you can relocate. Your choice. He set the paper down carefully. You're doing this for revenge. Number, I'm doing this because I built an empire while you were busy making deals with ghosts. Claudine leaned forward. Think about what this looks like. Optics matter. They only matter when there's power behind the image. And right now, that's not you. Silence stretched. Then Claudine reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope. Heavier than most. She placed it between us. 3.5% equity in Gallagher, she said. Clean, quiet. In exchange, you retract your statements, issue a public clarification, and cancel the lease escalation. I didn't touch the envelope. You want to pay me to erase the truth. We want to move forward, Garrett said, voice tight. You wanted that the day you handed me divorce papers, and offered the same house you locked me out of. Claudine shifted. You were always too sentimental. No, I said. You were always too confident I wouldn't remember everything. I reached into my own bag and placed a single document next to theirs. This is a notification of repurposing. Garrett read the first few lines, then looked up. You're turning our headquarters into a what? A nonprofit incubator, women-led startups, social equity, economic independence, and mentorship for founders shut out of systems like yours. You're kidding, Claudine said, lips bloodless. It opens in 90 days. Garrett shoved his chair back. You can't just erase decades of legacy. You're right, I said, rising. I'm not erasing it. I'm rewriting it. Have you ever been offered something small as a way to silence something much bigger? That moment when you realize they're not apologizing, they're negotiating. If you've ever had to choose between peace and power, drop a comment number 9 below. Now let's see what rewriting a legacy really looks like. I left them in the room, chairs askew, papers spread like debris. Miriam was waiting outside with a tablet. Media prep? Schedule it. I spent the rest of the day finalizing acquisition filings, coordinating with Sasha, and signing off on construction permits for the new center. Mila brought in a short list of potential startup founders. Every name on it came with a file. Every file came with a story. That night, I stood on the balcony of my apartment, the city wide open beneath me. The skyline didn't shimmer, it bowed. I lit a candle, poured tea, and opened my journal. Tonight's entry was simple. Legacy isn't what you leave behind, it's what you take back. I didn't knock. That was deliberate. The 9th floor still smelled like fresh paint and regret. The hallway lights hummed above me, low and steady. Doors half opened, desks half packed. Employees passed me with cardboard boxes and blank stares. No one asked who I was. No one dared. The name on the office door, Thorne, etched in chrome, would be gone by tomorrow. Garrett sat behind a desk that no longer belonged to him. The blinds were drawn. His tie was undone. A single box rested by the door, half filled. A resignation letter peeked out from a folder next to it. He didn't look up when I entered. I walked past the conference table, through the smell of too late surrender, and placed a single document on the corner of his desk. It was crisp, clean, final. Effective immediately, I said. He stared at it for a moment. Then his eyes met mine. You're turning the building into a charity? Not charity, I said. An incubator. For women who were told they were too much, too soft, too invisible to lead. He leaned back. You were never invisible. You never looked. He opened the file, read the first few lines. I watched the color fade from his face like a sunset losing warmth. When he reached the clause about revocation of access, his shoulders slumped. I built this floor. No, I said. You inherited it. I built. He didn't argue. That was new. I never thought it would end like this, he murmured. I did. Outside the office, Miriam stood waiting. She handed me a sleek black remote. Presentation queued, she said. I pressed once. Down the hall, in the main boardroom, a large monitor lit up with my name. Celine Thorne, founder, Arena Holdings. Below it, Reinvention Initiative, West Coast launch. Inside, a dozen new hires and partner reps waited to hear how this building, once the heart of Garrett's ambition, would now fuel other women's futures. I didn't need to walk in. My presence was already encoded in every slide, every marble tile, every scent of lavender in the new HR lounge. Instead, I turned back toward Garrett. You said I was good at surviving, I told him. You were right. but I got better at building. He stood, tried to match my height. What happens now? Now you leave. Completely. He glanced at the clock. Can I just stay until… No. My voice wasn't cruel. It was a gate closing. I left him there, door open, box waiting. Downstairs, the lobby was already being rebranded. The reception desk gleamed under new lighting. The wall where the family crest used to hang now bore a sleek, modern sign. Arana Innovation Center. A young employee with wide eyes and a trembling coffee cup stepped into my path. "Ms. Thorne?" she said, almost shy. I just wanted to say, if you're still hiring for the incubator, I'd love to apply. I studied her face. She reminded me of me, not the Celine who sat at the edge of the dinner table, but the one who stayed after hours, asked questions no one answered, read contracts twice just to be sure. "What's your name?" "Rhea." "Come in Monday," I said. "Bring hunger." She nodded like I'd handed her the keys to a new life. Outside, reporters were already gathering, microphones angled, lenses aimed. I stepped through the noise, into the sunlight, without a word. The statement had already been made. Later that evening, I returned to the park. The bench near the willow hadn't changed. Still the same plaque. In memory of Robert Thorne. Let the world be loud. You be steady. I sat, pulled a photo from my coat pocket. Me, age 10, standing beside my father, front teeth missing, pride intact. He'd believed in my strength long before I did. "Dad," I whispered, "not when they hurt me, but when it mattered." The wind picked up, dancing through the leaves. When I got home, Mila had left a package on my table. Inside, 5 business cards from prospective partners, 2 grant approvals, and a folded note. "You were right to finish it." She wasn't the enemy. He was. There was no signature, but I recognized the stationery. Alina. That night, I poured Earl Grey into my favorite porcelain cup and watched the city shift. A different kind of storm rolled through, one I didn't need to fight. I opened my journal. One last page. They wanted a wife. I became a name. I no longer stand outside anyone's doors. I sit at the center of the very rooms they once said I didn't belong in, with my name etched onto every contract, every table, every opportunity I built for myself. I have nothing left to prove. I exist, steady, clear, and free. They say karma arrives late, but it always shows up right on time. When you place dignity above noise and let action speak louder than revenge, the ones who tried to bury you will have no choice but to look up and watch you rise. Justice doesn't have to scream. It just needs to be prepared and delivered with precision. But what about you? Have you ever been treated like an outsider in your own life? Tell me about the moment you stood up and reclaimed your worth. I read every word. And if you want to know what happens when the person who cast you aside has to crawl back and ask for help, stay tuned. The next story will make you sit up and stare.